It's often said that 80% of the final exam is based on the one lecture you missed and that one book you didn't read. But you need not worry now. With this exam special, we'll ensure that you have all you need to be a topper. You might think at times that there should be someone else who can sit and prepare for your exams. Sorry, but that's not an option. You have to do that yourself. But we can definitely help you in doing so. With me, Arjun Bhagat, you'll always be directed towards the right path. So keeping everything else aside, we should now move towards today's session. The topic for today's episode is surface chemistry and isolation of elements. So firstly, let's take a look at the marks the chapter holds.
The unit surface chemistry carries a total of 4 marks, and the unit general principles and processes for isolation of elements accounts for 3 marks. Generally, one can expect very short answer type questions worth 1 mark or short answer type questions worth 2 to 3 marks.
A human mind isn't computerized, so it's natural for us to forget what we learned a few days back. So no tensions, no worries when we are around. We are sure that you'll all win the exam battle. But for that, let's brush up what this chapter entailed.
In this chapter, we learnt about adsorption, the Freundlich adsorption isotherm, physisorption, the function of a catalyst, enzymes, colloids, Ellingham's diagram, and lastly, the refining of metals.
I hope all that had swung out of your mind has come back and now you're all set to go for the exam series. But before doing so, let's take a look at the kinds of abilities that you'll be tested on.
This trend analysis has been given to you so that you have a fair idea of the topics to emphasize upon. To provide you a better perspective, questions testing your knowledge and representative ability are asked from this chapter. Questions can also be asked to test your conceptual ability.
So keep sharpening your conceptual skills, representative ability and knowledge to attempt questions from this unit. A coming up model question will prepare you for all this. Take a look.
State briefly the principles which serve as basis for the following operations in metallurgy. Number 1, froth flotation process. Number 2, zone refining. Number 3, refining by liquation. This is a knowledge-based question as it is directly asked on the topic concentration of ores. It only requires the application of knowledge that is gained by the students from this topic. Each part of question carries 1 mark. For the first part, that is froth flotation process, you'll write that this process is based on the principle that the sulfide ores are preferentially wetted by collector, which is generally pine oil, whereas the gangue particles get wetted by water. A rotating paddle agitates, producing froth from where ore particles, being lighter, are collected for further purification. Secondly, zone refining. It is based on the principle that impurities are more soluble in the molten state than in the solid state of the metal. And lastly, refining by liquation. Here you will mention that it is based on the principle that if the melting point of a metal and its impurity are different, the pure metal with low melting point will melt away, leaving the impurities behind, which has higher melting point than the metal. In this question, only the principles are asked, so give to the point answer and do not waste time in explaining these processes.
I can see that you're all charged up, but I do want to stress that it's really important to practice more and more questions as it helps you revise your basics and gives you that added confidence. I still remember when I was in school, my teachers always emphasized on solving more problems, irrespective of the subject or the topic. And you know, at Topper, we believe and suggest the same because practice makes perfect. Here comes the first question from this segment.
How is cast iron different from pig iron? And what is the role of cryolite in the metallurgy of aluminium? It is conceptual in nature and our difficulty meter rates it as average. Here comes the answer. Cast iron that contains about 3% carbon is extremely hard and brittle, whereas pig iron contains about 4% carbon. Pig iron is converted into cast iron by heating it with scrap iron and coke in a specially designed furnace. Coming to the second part, cryolite performs two functions in the metallurgy of aluminium. 1. It lowers the melting point of the mixture to about 1250 Kelvin. And 2. It improves the electrical conductivity of the cell. Well, a similar question was asked in CBSE 2006 and carries 2 marks. A thorough reading of the chapter makes you gain good scores here.
That was an easy one and I hope you were able to do it. But if you weren't, never walk away from failure. On the contrary, study it carefully and imaginatively for its hidden assets. With this spirit, let's try the next question and I bet this time you'll surely crack it. But provided you do it with full dedication. The next question is from the extraction of metals, where students have to recall the froth flotation process with the exact knowledge of action of depressants in it. It is an average conceptual question. Give to-the-point answers and save time.
What are depressants? How would you separate zinc sulfide and lead sulfide ores? It is conceptual in nature and our difficulty meter rates it as average. It's easy. Just write that depressants are the chemicals which are used to prevent certain types of particles from forming the froth, and you'll gain 1 mark straight away. Then mention zinc sulfide ore can be separated from lead sulfide ore by froth flotation process using sodium cyanide as depressant. Sodium cyanide acts as a depressant for zinc sulfide but does not prevent lead sulfide from the formation of froth. Thus, the 2 ores can be separated. Wow, 2 more marks in your kitty.
I'm really enjoying this session. What about you? If you think that you need to do any of these questions again or have some doubts, don't hesitate to log on to our website www.topperlearning.com. It's time for a quick break, but there's lots more coming up. More practice questions and the much awaited HOTS question. There are also tips to help you give your best shot at the exams. Until we return, solve this breaking question.
Why are lyophilic sols relatively more stable than lyophobic sols? This is a concept-based average question, so you need to write the main difference between the 2 sols. Since this is an important and scoring question, you should learn the differences thoroughly. Before we resume, here is the answer to the break question. The question was, why are lyophilic sols relatively more stable than lyophobic sols? I hope you did a lot of brainstorming to get this one. So just check if you were right or wrong. Here is the answer. Higher stability of lyophilic sols. See, lyophilic colloids have an affinity for the dispersion medium. So their sol can be prepared by merely dispersing them in dispersion medium. They are reversible. For example, agar-agar, gelatin, starch, egg albumin, and many more. On the other hand, lyophobic colloids are dispersion medium, hating colloids. So their sol cannot be prepared by merely dispersing them in the dispersion medium.
Welcome back to our exam special on surface chemistry and isolation of elements. I'm Arjun, your friend and guide. The chapter that we are discussing today talks about depressants, cast iron, lyophilic salts, principles used in metallurgy such as froth flotation process, zone refining, refining by liquation, etc. We have already attempted a few questions, but there are more coming up. So without wasting much time, let's go to our next practice question.
What happens when a freshly precipitated ferric hydroxide is shaken with a little amount of dilute solution of ferric chloride? And why is the sky blue in color? Explain. When a freshly precipitated ferric hydroxide is shaken with little amount of dilute solution of ferric chloride, the ferric hydroxide solution adsorbs Fe3 plus ions and breaks up into small size particles. The dimensions of these particles are same as the dimensions of colloidal particles. Writing this much will get you 1 mark. Now, coming to the second part of the question, why is the sky blue? The dust particles along with water present in the atmosphere scatter blue light, which reaches our eyes and the sky looks blue to us. Writing this would fetch you the remaining 1 mark.
This question requires students to recall colloidal solutions and the size of their particles. The second part of the question demands the basic principle behind this natural phenomenon to be mentioned. Now, reading the question well before hurrying to answer would enable you to understand better. This question can come for 2 marks. It's average difficulty as per our difficulty meter and puts your conceptual skills to test. Do get this one right, as you know exactly what to do. So done with it? Okay, here's more for you.
What is the chief ore of iron? Write chemical reactions taking place in the extraction of iron from its ore. Topper rates this knowledge-based question as an average 1. Here is the answer. Hematite or Fe2O3 is the chief iron ore. Iron is obtained by the reduction of its ore hematite in the blast furnace. The ore of iron is mixed with coke and limestone to form a mixture. This mixture is introduced into the blast furnace from the top, and a blast of hot air is blown in through the base of the furnace. The following reactions take place in the blast furnace. Number 1. The coke combines with oxygen to form carbon dioxide. Number 2. Due to intense heat in the furnace, limestone CaCO3 decomposes to form calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. Number 3. This carbon dioxide reacts with more coke to form more carbon monoxide. Number 4. Iron 3 oxide present in the ore is then reduced by carbon monoxide to form molten iron. The molten iron is collected at the bottom of the furnace. A similar question was asked in the CBSE 2006 exam. The question asked students to write chemical equations for the reactions involved in the manufacture of potassium permanganate from pyrolusite ore. This is the direct question. all you got to do is make sure that your equations are balanced.
So with this, we are through with our practice questions. It's now time to go to our HOTS segment. HOTS questions have been introduced by the CBSE to test high-order thinking skills and probe you to think beyond the books. That's also in sync with our ideology. So take a look at the HOTS question we have in store for you.
Explain in brief the mechanism of an enzyme catalysis. This question appeared in the sample papers for 3 marks. According to Topper's difficulty meter, it's an average problem that tests your conceptual and representative skills. A similar question might be asked in your exam, so take a look at how to answer it. Here goes the answer. Enzymes have many cavities present on the surface. These cavities are of characteristic shape and possess active groups. They are active centers on the surface of enzyme particles. The molecules of the reactants or substrate, which have a complementary shape, fit into these cavities just like a key fits into a lock, forming an activated complex. The activated complex decomposes to yield the products. Thus, the enzyme-catalyzed reactions may be considered to proceed in 2 steps. The first step involves the binding of the enzyme to substrate and form an activated complex represented as E plus S, forming ES. And the second step involves the decomposition of the activated complex to form product. ES leads to E plus P.
So that brings us to the end of today's practice session. But for more practice, you know what to do. Yes, log on to our website www.topperlearning.com. Well, you must have seen Tom and Jerry cartoons during your childhood, or some of you might be watching it even now. Did you notice how clever both the cat and the mouse are? Their plans are brilliant, and to be a winner, they plan their tips well. So here are some exam tips that you can keep in mind while attempting the questions.
In the chapter Surface Chemistry, the mechanism of enzyme catalysis is very important as it is asked in 3 marks type questions. So prepare it with a diagram as it is easy and quite scoring. Make sure you know all the properties and applications of colloids, as an indirect question of 1 mark is generally asked from them. Learn the topic Classification of colloids along with examples, as a question asked on this topic is mainly based on them. From the unit General Principles and Processes of Isolation of Elements, a 3 marks type question is generally asked on metallurgy of important metals like iron, copper and zinc, etc. So prepare them with chemical equations. Learn all the ores of metals along with their formulas in a tabular form, as 1 or 2 mark type questions can be asked on them. Both these chapters carry a weightage of 7 marks and are very scoring, as questions asked are simple and knowledge-based. So concentrate mainly on examples and applications to score well.
I hope these tips were handy and would help you do better in your exams. At the end, I like to quote Albert Einstein. He said, "Never regard study as a duty, but as an enviable opportunity to learn to know the liberating influence of beauty in the realm of the spirit for your own personal joy and to profit the community to which your later work belongs." Best of luck. See you again with another fresh and exciting episode of Exam Special.